All right, so November wasn't a huge reading month in terms of like numbers, but most of the books were really good and I did really enjoy them. So I'm trying to rank them by least favorite to favorite. This month was hard because most of them were like neck and neck. The only book I didn't like was like the last book, but the rest were almost interchangeable. But this is just like the format I want to do it in. So let's just get started. The book that I liked least this month that comes in at number 7 is The Enchanted Hacienda by J.C. Cervantes. I thought I was going to love this book. I saw the synopsis while I was reading another book and I had to like hold myself back from jumping into this. So the synopsis is our main character Harlow comes from an enchanted like magical family that has this farm in Mexico that they cultivate the flowers to work into spells. She has just gotten laid off from her job. She ends a relationship, so she goes back to the farm to like kind of just get her bearings, right? I just got laid off from my job and like I'm very like okay with it. The first time I got laid off from a job, like I was inconsolable. Like I had to pull over and cry. This time I'm older. I don't take it personally. I know the economy's terrible. I know that, it's just like, it's just what happened. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't love to read about a character in a magical realism book going through the same things, and she's Latina too. So I was like, okay, this book is going to be great. It started off great. I did enjoy like the setup of the book, but there was just like so many things I didn't like because I felt like it was a lot of pages about nothing. So when she explains her family's magic, it's more about what they can't do, both like it's not something they can do and just morally they won't do, than what they can do. So it's like they can't do love spells, but they can strengthen the bonds in a relationship that's already there. They can't cause a breakup, but they can help you heal from the breakup that already happened. So it's just like very small magic that like it's like I would not quit my day job for that or dedicate my life to keeping this a secret because this is a very closely guarded secret. It comes up many times. There's a reporter that's like poking her nose in and trying to like expose this family, but it's like they don't really do much to have all this like time dedicated to keeping this a secret. The other thing I hate in like magical books is when the magical character, like something good happens to them and they enjoy it, but then they're like, wait, did this happen because of fate, because it was meant to happen, or because of my magic? And like they cannot accept it if it was because of their magic. So they have to undo it. So it just felt like it dissolved into a lot of pages about nothing. I read a lot of books about witches, and I'm okay with like the gamut being big, like from huge hocus pocus magic to like not big magic. Like I read this book last month, Black Candle Women, I believe it was called, where the characters were in real life, like this real life. They do practice hoodoo and voodoo. It is a big part of like their spiritual practice, but there wasn't like all this anguish about like keeping it a secret, about like nobody can find out. They did keep it a secret for professional reasons, but like in this book, The Enchanted Hacienda, it just felt like pages were dedicated to like nothing. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was The Enchanted Hacienda. Number 6 is The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. I told you guys I love Britney Spears, so it does hurt me to put her in number 6. But like this memoir was very short. I don't feel like it was ghostwritten or heavily edited, which is like a good thing. It was her authentic voice and perspective on what happened, but it was very short. And I feel like it was repetitive, but like that was her life. Like it was repetitive. It was stolen from her. She was drugged up. So like, it makes sense that that's what the book was. But like her conservatorship just ended like a year or two ago, and this book was written right after that. So like I feel like a little more perspective, a little more time would have been better. And she's just like very young to have a memoir. She did go through terrible things, and I'm glad like the truth of what she's held in is finally out there. But I still like really enjoyed that book. It was like 5 hours, like you can't go wrong. Coming in at number 5 is The Second Mrs. Astor. This follows Madeline Forrest Astor's life, like her courtship. Basically, it starts at her courtship with John Jacob Astor and their marriage, their honeymoon, and like the last part of it is their time on the Titanic. It didn't take up a lot of it. This book is written as if Madeline Forrest has written these letters to the baby she was pregnant with on the Titanic. So like it was a good love story. Like I did get choked up at the end because like as you're reading it, if you know history, you know what's going to happen. You know John Jacob Astor is going to die on the ship along with their dog. Their dog played a big part throughout the book, and it was just like knowing what happens it made it harder to read, but it was still like really good. I did get very choked up at the end. I don't love romance, but every once in a while a book will sneak in. I started reading this book because I am really into The Gilded Age on HBO. So like that's why I picked it up. But yeah, really enjoyed the book. Number four is Hex Education by Maureen Kilmer. I read Suburban Hell by her last week, and I feel like that book was a little bit darker. This was more fun and silly. So in this book, you have a luxury real estate agent, Sarah Nelson. She has two twins in their teens. She's married. She's a luxury real estate agent. Like, she has a full-time job, but she's also a witch. She does very small spells. Like, she just kind of keeps the house clean, keeps the fridge stocked, and nobody knows she's a witch. It's something that she keeps hidden. The reason that she keeps this hidden is because when she was in college, she and her coven did this big spill that went wrong. There was a big fire, people got hurt. So on top of like not wanting to be prosecuted for like arson, they just don't want people to know they're witches. So they kept it a secret, but they have this reunion where they meet up again at the college and like their magic goes haywire. So throughout the book, like you have them trying to control their magic, figure out what's going on. You have this podcaster that's trying to figure out what happened the night of the fire. And it's just like it's silly, it's funny, and I like the nostalgia parts of it because they went to college like in the early millennium. So you get like flashbacks to like them wearing Juicy Couture sheets, the Urban Decay honey powder, like things that if you live through that time, you'll remember. So like it was like a fun book and it was silly. Like there was just like really, really funny parts throughout the whole book. So yeah, that was number four for me. Number three is Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. So in this book, you have two main characters, Reed and Anna. The majority of the POVs are in their perspective, but you get a few more from like different people. They feel like they are very unlucky people. They just went through something extremely traumatic before the book starts. They had their first baby, but during labor, Anna, like something happened where she became paralyzed from the waist down. So on top of like being a new mom and having all those emotions, she also is going through like not having full control of her body. So it's like she's going through a lot of things. Her husband, Reed, he's kind of like a slacker, but all of a sudden he has to be like the breadwinner on top of like caring for a newborn and caring for his wife, like who he thought was going to be his partner. So suddenly he has like two people that completely depend on him. And so like their emotional trauma is like gripping to read, but then you have like the actual horror part of the book because they win the housing lottery to live in the Deptford in New York. A fake building, but it's very like Rosemary's Baby. Like things are going on that don't add up. The body horror was really good in this book. I don't want to give too much away, but it was a really good book. Number two is Slewfoot by Brum. I could like kick myself over how long I've put off reading this book. For one reason or another, I don't know why I felt like I wasn't gonna like the format of it. But once I picked it up in Barnes and Noble and I thought I was just gonna flip through it, get the gist, put it back and read it at a later time. Like once I started reading it, I was like, oh no, like I have to buy this. I have to see this through. So our main character, Abatha, like grew up in London with a pagan mom. Like she did like she was called a cunning woman. She did little spells and stuff, but then her terrible father sells her to be a wife to someone in America. And her husband Edward is pretty good by the standards of the time. Like he was very sensitive, very soft, but he did get pushed over a lot by his older brother Wallace. And Wallace is basically like okay with screwing them over left and right. He gets mad that Abatha points out how often he takes like the last of their food, the last of their wine. And when he's finally trying to like take their farm out from under them when they only have like one payment, Abatha like finally like she just really speaks up. They get into it. But the court decides to give Abatha the chance to like earn the land or like, you know, just keep the land. But that makes Wallace like infuriated and he's like really after Abatha to like take her down, whatever. But of course, in this time, people are being accused of devilry and having like consorting with the devil. And you have a different POV of Samson who's like trying to figure out who he is. But it was just like it was a fun book. It's like almost like a fairy tale book, but you know, devilish. So really enjoyed that book. Okay, number one is Being Henry by Henry Winkler. This was an audiobook I listened to, and I've been listening to it on and off throughout like the month. I finally finished it last night. It was just like really enjoyable to listen to him. He's had a long history in Hollywood, so he has like a lot of funny stories, but he also has a lot of like sadness in his life, especially growing up like with his parents. His parents escaped Germany like as Jews in the during the Holocaust. His father had to lie to their mother to get her out of the country because she didn't want to leave like all their family. And of course, all their family ends up dying like at the hands of the Nazis. And it's just kind of like the shadow of what he grew up in, which like it's which is like so many people would go through like so many horrible things and turn to comedy like as a way to cope with it. And he just has so many good stories about Hollywood, like when he was playing the Fonz on Happy Days, and they're interviewing people to play Mork the alien, Robin Williams comes in, and when they tell him to take a seat, he does a headstand and they hire him, right? And then later on, when they're asking the casting director, why did you hire Robin Williams? He was just like, he's the only alien that auditioned. So he just has like these really funny stories to tell about Hollywood. I loved his story about meeting Wes Craven for Scream and like his time filming it and how he learned more about horror like on that film. Also, throughout this book, his wife will give her perspective and do like a little like reading about what she was going through at the time. So that added to the book. And like Henry Winkler's 78. So it's like peak memoir where you're going to get a lot of perspective and you're going to get a good story. So I feel like that's why like I really, really enjoyed that book. All right, so those are all the books I read in November. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.